Beneath the endless silk skies of ancient China, where night unfolded like a dark fan brushed with silver dust, the moon lingered as a quiet witness to the secrets of lovers and gods alike. Its light flowed over jade rooftops and rippling lotus ponds, a pale elixir spilling upon the world, softening the sharpness of shadows. The air shimmered with warmth, scented by osmanthus flowers that trembled in the stillness, their perfume rising like a sigh toward the heavens. It was a time when the line between mortal and divine was drawn in breath and touch, when hearts dared to reach beyond their fragile lifespans in search of forever. In that golden era, when emperors still bowed to the sky and stars carried whispers of immortality, stories were not merely told. They lived within the veins of rivers, in the rustle of silk sleeves, in the trembling of candles that flickered between devotion and desire. The heavens themselves seemed to bend toward the earth, curious about the hearts that beat below. And among those hearts, one would rise to become eternal, not through conquest or power, but through love so deep it defied death. The moon, cold yet tender, was already her silent throne before she ever reached it. It had watched her since birth, that delicate woman whose beauty could unspool the composure of kings. Her laughter was the chime of porcelain cups, her steps the whisper of falling petals. But beauty in those times was never without consequence. It was an omen, a spark the gods might envy, and the heavens, though vast and luminous, were not merciful when mortals desired too much. The empire slept under veils of mist and moonlight, dreaming of immortality. Scholars mixed potions by candlelight, seeking the secrets of endless life. Priests read the movement of stars, hoping to touch eternity with words. Yet no secret could remain hidden for long, not in a world where longing itself was a form of prayer. The legend begins not with thunder or battle, but with a sigh, the quiet yearning of a woman who looked at the moon not as a goddess, but as a mirror. Chang'e was her name, a syllable like a breath, delicate, fleeting, and yet destined to echo across ages. She was not divine by birth, but her presence carried the grace of something celestial. Those who saw her spoke of light that seemed to follow wherever she walked. They said even the breeze softened near her calm. Her gaze held the shimmer of deep waters, reflecting dreams not yet spoken. And though the court admired her as a vision of perfection, her heart remained hidden like a pearl within its shell, waiting for a moment that would awaken it. That moment came when he appeared, a man whose strength rivaled the mountains and whose eyes burned with mortal fire. The great archer Yo-Yi, whose arrows once pierced suns and saved the world from ruin. His name was already legend, but legends are lonely things. In her presence, the warrior became merely a man, stripped of all glory, but rich in feeling. And in his gaze, she found the promise of something both terrifying and tender. Love that could outlast the moon's own light. But love in those ancient days was never simple. The gods, jealous of mortal passion, laid traps woven from beauty and temptation. Whispers spread of a celestial elixir, an ambrosia that could free one from death itself. It shimmered in the dreams of emperors and thieves, but its taste was said to divide the fates of lovers, for one could not drink it and remain bound to the earth. The elixir was both gift and curse, a reflection of the moon itself, radiant, distant, untouchable. Chang'e and Hu Yi did not yet know how cruelly their desires would be tested, for now they lived in the soft bloom of love's first eternity, when every touch feels infinite and every glance promises forever. Their world was spun from quiet mornings and long nights beneath the stars, the air humming with unspoken devotion. When he touched her hand, it was not merely flesh meeting flesh, it was the meeting of worlds, the moment the mortal dared to reach toward the divine. The moon observed, pale and knowing, as though it already foresaw the price they would pay. Its light bathed their faces in silver, and in that glow, even time seemed hesitant to move forward. The world held its breath, poised on the edge of something fateful. For love, once awakened, never rests. It seeks to expand, to conquer even the boundaries of mortality. And beneath that silent sky, Chang'e began to dream of what it would mean to never lose this feeling, to never let her love fade into dust. She did not yet understand that eternity and love are not the same, that immortality can preserve the body, but not the warmth of a shared heartbeat. Still, the temptation lingered, sweet and dangerous as honey on her tongue. Legends say that the gods watched her with curiosity, wondering how far a mortal heart would go for the illusion of forever. The stars blinked in sympathy, and the moon trembled faintly, as if trying to warn her that even eternal light casts eternal shadows. The palace of the archer and his beloved stood at the world's edge, where the heavens bent low and the wind carried secrets from the stars. There, every night, Chang'e would pour tea beneath the moon and watch her reflection ripple in the water's surface. Sometimes she would reach out, touching the trembling image, and feel the chill of something beyond, something calling her. Was it destiny? Was it desire? Or was it the slow pull of the heavens already claiming what they believed was theirs? In the stillness of those nights, the boundary between her breath and the wind blurred. Her thoughts wandered like drifting lanterns, filled with unspoken questions. What if love could defy death? What if time could be tamed? And if the gods themselves denied her that right, would she not be justified in reaching for it? Her heart, once serene, began to stir with restless longing, the kind that no mortal prayer could quiet. The myth says that even the moonlight changed that year, brighter, softer, as if drawn to her. The stars shifted in patterns unseen before, and the world seemed to hum with expectation. Animals grew silent when she passed. Lakes mirrored her perfectly, without a ripple. Something was gathering, unseen but inevitable, like the tide before a storm. There was beauty in that stillness, the kind that exists just before something breaks. The lovers did not yet sense the fracture forming beneath their feet, the thin crack in destiny's porcelain bowl. They were wrapped too tightly in one another, their hearts pulsing in rhythm with the universe's slow breath. But the gods, unseen, were already watching, already deciding. The scent of osmanthus thickened, golden petals falling like soft rain. A strange hush covered the land, as though even nature itself was waiting. The moon grew rounder each night, luminous and full of promise. Chang-E would gaze upon it for hours, her eyes glassy with thought, her fingers tracing invisible lines in the air, as though the moon itself whispered her name. In those moments, she felt something stir deep within, a pull neither earthly nor divine. It was not ambition that drove her, nor greed, but love in its most dangerous form, the kind that seeks to last forever. She felt the boundaries of her mortality like a too tight garment, pressing against her soul. She wanted to be light. She wanted to be eternal. The wind carried her unspoken wish to the stars, and they listened in silence. The world seemed to pause, its heartbeat slowing. Somewhere, far above, the heavens shifted, setting fate into motion. And so began the story of Chang-E, the woman who dared to drink the moonlight, who traded the warmth of mortal love for the chill of eternal beauty. But that moment had not yet come, for now the world waited, trembling on the cusp of her choice. The moon glowed brighter, the air thick with invisible threads of destiny. Every sigh, every touch, every glance became part of something larger, a love that would outlast time itself, but not without a price. And beneath the jade sky, in the stillness between breaths, the myth began to take shape, as if carved by the moon's own hand. A story of love, longing, and the delicate cruelty of eternity. Under the gentle veil of moonlight, Chang-E moved through the world as though she were part of a dream that refused to fade with dawn. Her grace was not loud or deliberate. It was the kind that lingered in silence, the kind that left traces in the air after she had gone. When she walked, silk whispered around her ankles, and even the lantern flames seemed to follow her steps. Her face carried the softness of dawn, yet behind her eyes lived something deeper, a quiet melancholy, the ache of someone who had looked too long at the sky and felt its distance settle in her bones. She was luminous, yes, but that light came from a soul that had learned to shine against the gravity of sadness. She had known the adoration of many, emperors, poets, strangers who caught only the edge of her shadow and felt their hearts tremble, but none of it ever reached her. Their praises fell like petals that never touched the ground, and in the hollow left by their reverence, she felt herself growing untouchable. It was not arrogance that separated her from the world. It was the loneliness that beauty brings, when admiration replaces understanding. She was worshipped, but never seen, desired, but never truly known. Then came Hao Yi, the man whose legend had already burned across the heavens. He was a creature of fire and mortal breath, the archer who shot down 9 sons and spared the world from ruin. His name carried the echo of storms and valor, yet in his presence one felt not fear, but warmth, an intensity that drew others in, like standing close to the flame and feeling both comforted and consumed. His shoulders bore the weight of destiny, but his heart longed for something simpler, purer, to be loved not as a hero, but as a man. Where Chang'e was stillness, Hao Yi was movement. His voice, deep and steady, carried the tone of a river in spring, strong yet full of life. His laughter was rare, but when it came, it broke the solemn air around him, and even the wind seemed to pause to listen. There was nothing celestial about him, and that was what made him irresistible. His hands, calloused from the bowstring, carried the truth of mortality, effort, pain, creation. And when those hands brushed against Chang'e's, the contrast was as sharp as day meeting night. She cool as moonlight, he burning as the sun. And yet when they stood together, the world felt perfectly balanced. Their first meeting was said to have taken place beneath a wisteria tree, where shadows of violet petals swayed like fragments of dream. Hu Yi had come to offer thanks at a shrine after his triumph, and she had been there, tending to the sacred flame. The moment their eyes met, the silence between them grew heavy, too full, too intimate. Chang'e lowered her gaze, but the faintest curve of her lips betrayed something unspoken. A question, a recognition. Perhaps even then they both understood that their fates had begun to entwine. He spoke to her softly, his voice roughened by years of wind and battle, yet tender as though he feared breaking the moment. She answered in tones as delicate as the brush of silk. Their words were few, yet each syllable seemed to linger, suspended like a petal on water. There was no need for grand declarations. The air between them was already alive with meaning. When he reached out to hand her a small offering, a folded prayer slip, his fingers grazed hers. That touch, brief and unplanned, carried the warmth of everything he was. It was as though all his courage, all his fire, had found its purpose in that simple moment. Chang'e felt her breath catch, a quiet tremor she quickly hid behind composure. But inside, something fragile and bright unfolded. After that night, their paths crossed again and again, as though the world itself conspired to bring them together. Sometimes in the gardens where cranes glided through the mist, sometimes along the riverbanks where the reeds whispered in rhythm with the wind. They never sought each other, yet always found themselves near. Their closeness grew not from words, but from silence, the shared understanding that comes when two souls recognize each other without needing to ask why. Chang'e began to laugh again. The sound startled even her, light and unguarded. It came when he teased her gently, or when he told her of his battles in clumsy metaphors that made her eyes shine with amusement. Her laughter, once rare as spring rain, became the melody of their days. And for Hu Yi, who had faced monsters and gods alike, that sound became his new victory, a softer, truer kind of conquest. In return, he learned gentleness. The warrior who once pulled bowstrings until his fingers bled, now found tenderness in the act of brushing her hair from her face, or tracing the curve of her wrist while speaking of the stars. He admired her strength as much as her beauty, the quiet endurance that lived in her gaze. To him, She was not untouchable. She was human in the most exquisite way, filled with longing and light. When they were together, time seemed reluctant to move. The moon often found them sitting side by side, the world hushed around them. Sometimes they would speak of eternity, not as philosophers, but as lovers uncertain of how long such happiness could last. He would tell her, half laughing, that he wished the night could stretch forever. She would smile and say that even forever would not be enough. Their love was not a storm, but a slow burning flame, steady and consuming. Yet beneath its glow lingered a shadow, an unspoken awareness that something so perfect could not remain untouched by fate. The gods, after all, were not kind to those who loved too deeply. One night, as they lay in the garden beneath drifting blossoms, Chang'e traced her finger along Hui's arm, feeling the strength beneath his skin. She whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind, "You carry so much." "And you," he answered, his hand finding hers, "carry more than you show." She smiled faintly. "You speak as though you see through me." "I do," he said, his tone soft but certain. "And what I see is light." The moon hung low above them, its glow silvering the contours of their faces. In that light, every movement became sacred. Her breath against his skin, his fingers resting against the curve of his waist. They existed not as mortals, but as echoes of something divine, an embodiment of the balance between fire and moonlight. Still, within her heart, Chang'e felt the same quiet ache that had always lived there, the longing to preserve this love beyond the fragility of flesh. She watched him sleep sometimes, his expression softened, unguarded, and in the stillness she would imagine what it would mean to lose him, to watch his strength fade, to see time carve lines upon his face while she remained unchanged. The thought frightened her more than death itself. Hui, though mortal, carried his own hunger for something eternal. He had challenged the suns, wrestled with destiny, and felt the thrill of conquering what others deemed impossible. Yet before her, he realized that all his victories were meaningless beside the simple need to stay by her side. He did not crave immortality for glory anymore. He wanted it for love. Thus, they became each other's reflection, her yearning for eternity mirroring her fear of transience. She, serene and luminous, dreamed of preserving what they had. He, fierce and burning, dreamed of defying time itself to protect it. Together, They were harmony and contradiction, a melody written on the surface of the moon, beautiful, fragile, inevitable. And so the world continued to turn beneath them, unaware that within one quiet garden, two hearts had begun to shape the course of legend. Their love, pure and human, was already brushing against the fabric of the divine. The moonlight draped over them like a vow, cool and eternal, as though it already claimed her for its own. And though neither of them knew it yet, that same light would one day separate them, turning love into myth and devotion into eternal longing. It began as a whisper, soft as the rustle of silk at midnight, the first hint of something beyond their reach. The tales of the elixir of immortality drifted through the empire like wind carrying perfume, impossible to grasp, yet impossible to ignore. Some said it was hidden within the chambers of the Queen Mother of the West, locked away in crystalline vials that glowed like frozen moonlight. Others said it was made of crushed stars and the breath of gods, its power too great for any mortal hand. But to Chang'e and Hou Yi, the elixir became something else entirely. Not a myth, but a promise. Their love had deepened with the seasons, growing richer, quieter, more complete. Yet beneath its still surface lay an invisible tremor, the truth of mortality. The days passed, and each one left a trace of change upon Hou Yi's face, a subtle shadow beneath his eyes, a quiet fatigue in his movements. She would watch him as he trained, his bow drawn toward the sky, and a knot would form in her chest. Time was cruel. It crept even into perfection. One evening, as the moon rose swollen and golden, Hou Yi returned home with a fire in his eyes. He said, "I have seen it." He spoke of a journey to the mountains, of an immortal who guarded a vial of the divine potion, said to grant eternal life. Chang'e listened in silence, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. The air around them seemed to shift. "Eternal life," she murmured at last, the words tasting foreign, dangerous. "And what would we do with eternity, my love?" He looked at her as though she had asked him whether he wished to breathe. "We would live together forever, no more fear of parting, no shadow of death between us, only you and me beneath the same moon for all time." His conviction burned so fiercely it frightened her. For a moment she saw not the man she loved, but a reflection of his deepest yearning, bright, consuming, and unstoppable. She reached out, brushing her fingers along his jaw. She whispered, "You would challenge the heavens again for me." "For us," he corrected, his hands capturing hers, his touch warm and certain. "I have faced the wrath of suns. What is one more defiance for love?" Her heart ached at the sound of his words, because she knew love that defied the gods never ended without a wound. Yet the thought of losing him, of seeing his mortal body wither while she remained unchanged, haunted her every breath. It was a cruel truth. The deeper their love grew,
the closer it brought her to despair.
The days that followed blurred into a feverish haze. Hao Yi trained harder, hunted longer, spoke often of destiny. Chang Yi, though silent, felt the pull of his dream wrapping around her, thread by invisible thread. She began to imagine it too, an eternity together, their hands forever entwined beneath the moon that would never wane. But the thought carried another image, darker and sharper. What if the elixir did not bind them, but tore them apart? The elixir, said the legends, was a mirror to the heart. It gave not what one desired, but what one truly was. Those who sought it for power found only ruin. Those who sought it for love found eternity alone. She tried to dismiss the fear, but it lingered like the taste of iron. Still, the longing deepened. Desire, which was once gentle, became a storm. When she looked at him, she felt it rise through her like heat, an ache that was both love and hunger, tenderness and terror. He too seemed changed. His eyes shone with purpose, and when he touched her, there was urgency in his hands, as though he could already feel time slipping away. One night, the two stood together in the courtyard, the moon hanging low like a lantern of destiny. The wind stirred her hair, and the scent of osmanthus filled the air. "If I find it," he said quietly, "if I bring it back, will you drink it with me?" Her breath faltered. The question hung between them like a blade. "Would you still love me," she asked, "if I said no?" His silence was answer enough. He turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the mountains slept beneath the stars. "I would love you even if you chose death, but I would die knowing you could have lived." Something fragile within her cracked at those words. She wanted to say she would follow him anywhere, that love was worth defying heaven for, but her heart recoiled. There was something in the moonlight at night, something that watched them. She felt it pressing against her skin, cold and knowing. The gods had heard his vow. Days later, he left to seek the elixir. The nights without him were heavy, filled with shadows that whispered her fears back to her. She walked through the empty halls of their home and felt time closing in. Every sound, every flicker of light reminded her of his touch, his voice, his warmth. She longed for him so deeply that even the moon's light felt cruel, mocking her with its permanence. When he returned, he carried in his hands a small vial, glowing with soft silver radiance. The liquid inside shimmered like living moonlight, pulsing gently, as if it possessed a heartbeat of its own. "It's real," he said, his voice unsteady with awe. "We are saved." Chang Yi's gaze fixed on the elixir. It was beautiful beyond reason, a drop of eternity contained in glass. Yet beneath its beauty she sensed danger, the same kind of beauty she saw in her reflection when she smiled through sorrow. She felt its pull, seductive and silent. Her hand lifted almost involuntarily, fingertips hovering near it. The vial was cool, almost cold, and in its glow she saw not salvation, but distance. "Drink it with me," Hou-Yi urged. "Let the gods rage if they must. They cannot take from us what eternity will grant." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to believe him, to trust that eternity could be kind. But something deep within, the voice of the moon perhaps, whispered that love was meant to be fragile because it was mortal. To strip it of its limits was to strip it of its meaning. Still, she could not resist touching the vial again. The sensation coursed through her body like cool fire, awakening every nerve. Desire swelled within her, not just for the elixir, but for the promise it held, to never lose him, to never feel the ache of absence again. Her breath quickened. His hands closed around hers, steady and burning. The world seemed to narrow to that single point of contact, skin, warmth, eternity suspended between them. Their eyes met, and in that look lived everything: love, fear, longing, defiance. She could feel his heartbeat beneath his skin, strong and desperate. Her pulse matched his, two rhythms colliding, and in the heat of that moment she knew whatever choice she made would shape not only their fates, but the heavens themselves. The moon loomed above, vast and silent, its light pouring over them like liquid glass. The vial trembled in her grasp, growing brighter, as if sensing the tension in her heart. Around them, the air thickened with invisible energy. The scent of flowers grew sharp, intoxicating. "Together," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Always." Chang'e closed her eyes. The word "always" echoed through her like a vow and a curse at once. Her lips hovered near the vial's rim, and the scent of eternity, cold, sweet, infinite, filled her lungs. She trembled, caught between desire and dread. Desire burned hotter than fear, and yet deep within that fire a shadow waited, because even in her love she felt the weight of something watching, something divine and distant, ready to take what was not meant to be held. The elixir pulsed once, a heartbeat of light between their joined hands. The gods, it seemed, had begun to listen. The moment of choice approached, shimmering and fragile as the reflection of the moon on still water, and love, pure and mortal, teetered on the edge of becoming legend. The night of her choice came wrapped in silence so deep that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The moon hung immense and tender above the world, pouring its silver light across the courtyard where Chang'e stood, her robe whispering around her ankles like restless mist. The vial of the elixir gleamed in her palm, alive with a light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. It was not merely liquid, it was the distilled essence of eternity, the sigh of gods captured in glass. Hou-Yi stood before her, his eyes burning with a love so fierce it trembled on the edge of desperation. His voice was low, trembling with both faith and fear. "Drink, my love," he whispered, "and we will never be parted." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw everything she had ever loved reflected in that single gaze. His strength, his devotion, his mortality. The scent of him, sun-warmed skin, the faint trace of bowstring oil filled her senses. Her fingers trembled as she held the vial between them. "Together," she murmured, though even as she said it, the word felt fragile, uncertain. A breath passed between them, light as silk. Then she lifted the vial to her lips. The moment the elixir touched her tongue, the world shattered into light. It was not sweetness or warmth that filled her. It was vastness. A flood of cold fire rushed through her veins, burning and freezing all at once. Her body arched, her breath caught in a gasp that felt both ecstasy and agony. The air trembled around her, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. The moon's glow intensified, drawn toward her as if recognizing its own essence within her. Ho Yi's voice broke through the brilliance, calling her name. She tried to answer, but the sound caught in her throat. Her body grew impossibly light, as though the earth itself had loosened its hold. Her heart pounded, then faltered as the elixir spread deeper, claiming her inch by inch. "Chang-e!" he cried again, reaching for her. Their fingertips brushed, and she felt everything: his heat, his fear, his love. That single touch was the entire world compressed in a heartbeat. She wanted to cling to it, to him, but the pull from above was too strong. Her feet lifted from the ground, the silk of her robes swirling like mist around her legs. Her hair streamed upward, black against the silver glow. Every movement was agony and grace intertwined, her body a vessel of unbearable beauty and sorrow. The elixir had not granted her peace. It had torn her open, made her one with the very force she feared. She saw him below, reaching, his face lifted in anguish, eyes filled with tears that glimmered like stars. "Forgive me," she whispered, though her lips no longer moved. The words were soundless, yet he seemed to hear, for his expression broke with pain, too deep for speech. Her body dissolved into light, her senses expanding beyond flesh. She could feel the hum of the air, the heartbeat of the world, the cold serenity of the heavens. The pull of the moon was irresistible now. It called to her not as a stranger, but as a home she had forgotten she belonged to. As she rose, time began to fracture. Each second stretched into eternity. She saw their memories unfold below her like silk, unrolling across the earth. Their laughter under the wisteria tree, the nights of whispered promises, the warmth of his hands on her skin. Every moment of love blazed through her as if it were happening all at once. The intensity was unbearable, and yet she clung to it, desperate to feel him even as the distance grew. Her heart was breaking, but it broke beautifully. The pain did not destroy her, it transformed her. Her tears became light, falling like silver rain that vanished before touching the ground. Her sorrow became radiance. Her love became the glow that wrapped the moon itself. She tried to resist, to hold herself down, but the elixir had rewritten the laws of her being. Her body shimmered with translucent brilliance. Her pulse slowed until it merged with the rhythm of the stars. Below,
Hu Yi's cries became faint, swallowed by the vast quiet of the heavens. The last thing she saw before the world blurred into light was his hand outstretched toward her, trembling, strong, human, and her own fading into air. Then everything was still. She floated in the cold sea of the sky, her breath mingling with the silence of eternity. The earth below seemed impossibly distant, a memory fading at the edge of her vision. Her skin no longer carried warmth, her heart no longer beat in rhythm with the world. Yet within that stillness something shimmered, her love, unextinguished, pulsing softly like an ember beneath snow. The moon received her gently, its light wrapped around her shoulders, cool and tender, like the touch of an old friend. She felt herself becoming one with it, her essence diffusing through its endless glow. The transformation was not violent now. It was a surrender, a release. She understood too late that this had never been betrayal, it was destiny. Love had not failed her, it had simply changed form. She walked across the moon's surface, her steps leaving trails of soft light. The silence there was absolute, but within it she could hear echoes, his voice, his laughter, his breath. They drifted through her like wind through gauze, beautiful and unbearable. She pressed her hand to her chest, where her heart should have been, and found only emptiness, and yet that emptiness was full. Far below, she could see him, a lone figure standing in the courtyard, the glow of his torch flickering weakly against the night. His face was turned upward, eyes searching the heavens until they found her. She saw him fall to his knees, bowing low, his hand pressed to the earth as if to keep himself from being torn apart. Her tears shimmered into the void, falling as tiny lights that the world below would later call stars. She wanted to speak to him, to tell him that love had not ended, that she was still his, even if their worlds had split. But her voice no longer belonged to the air, so instead she let her light speak for her. The moon grew brighter, glowing with a radiance that softened the darkness around his lonely figure. And though she could no longer touch him, she poured every memory, every heartbeat, every fragment of their shared life into that light, until it became her final embrace. The gods watched in silence, their judgment cold, but even they could not extinguish the beauty of what had been born that night. Chang'e, the mortal woman who drank the moonlight, became the embodiment of love eternal, its splendor and its sorrow forever intertwined. She sank to her knees upon the silver plains, her hair fanning out like spilled ink, her skin luminous as crystal. The world was quiet, except for the faint hum of her pulse merging with the moon's. She closed her eyes, and the last remnants of her mortal form faded, leaving behind only radiance. For an instant, an eternal instant, everything was one. Pain, love, loss, and light. Then the moment dissolved into stillness, and she became legend. Below, Hou Yi remained where she had left him, the taste of her name lingering on his lips. He lifted his eyes to the moon, where her shadow now dwelled, and whispered, "Always." The word reached her somehow, faint, distant, but real. It rippled through the light like a heartbeat, and the moon shone brighter in response. And so she stayed there, eternal and untouchable, watching over the world she once walked, her sorrow transformed into gentle radiance. In that perfect silence, Chang'e finally understood. Love could not escape fate, but it could outshine it. And in that understanding, she surrendered completely, not to death, not to immortality, but to love itself, vast as the night sky.
When dawn returned to the mortal world, it found Hu Yi standing alone beneath the paling sky. The scent of night still clung to the air, jasmine, smoke, and the faint trace of her presence. He had not moved since she vanished, since her final whisper dissolved into moonlight. The vial lay shattered at his feet, its last drop evaporating like a soul escaping the confines of flesh. Around him the world continued. Crickets resumed their hidden songs. A breeze stirred the wisteria. But for Hu Yi, time had stopped. Above him, the moon gleamed brighter than it ever had, immense and heartbreakingly close. He felt her there. He knew it as surely as he knew the beat of his own heart. Yet the distance between them was infinite. He fell to his knees, the earth cool beneath his palms. "Chang Yi," he whispered, her name trembling like a prayer on his lips. He searched the heavens, hoping to glimpse her shape, her shadow, anything that could prove that she still existed in some form he could reach. But all he saw was the endless silver glow, pure, cold, and silent. Up in that sacred loneliness, Chang Yi awoke to a new reality. Her body had become weightless, her heart translucent. She stood upon the moon's smooth plains, where no wind stirred, no sound broke the stillness. The light around her was constant, serene, unending, an ocean without tides. She looked down and saw the world below, alive with color and motion. Fires glowed faintly across the earth like beating hearts. Rivers shimmered under starlight. It all felt so achingly distant, like a dream she could never touch again. She pressed a hand to her chest, but there was no pulse, only a hum of quiet energy, the rhythm of eternity. She could feel him, though, somewhere far below. His sorrow vibrated through the thin veil between heaven and earth, a warm ache against her cool stillness. The connection between them had not broken. It had simply changed shape. She wandered the moon's surface, her robe flowing behind her like soft mist. Every step she took sent ripples of light through the dust. When she paused, the stillness deepened, vast and crystalline. The stars hung around her in patient silence, and she realized that she had become one of them, immortal, luminous, and utterly alone.
From above, she watched him rebuild his days. She saw him wander forests that once echoed with their laughter, saw him kneel by rivers where they had once bathed in moonlight. Each night he looked up at her, and each time he did, her glow brightened just a little, as if answering his gaze. He began to leave offerings beneath the moon, flowers, rice cakes, small tokens of remembrance. His love transformed into ritual, his passion into devotion. He lived on, mortal and aging, yet bound to her by that silver thread of longing. And she, ageless and untouchable, felt his every heartbeat as a whisper across the lunar silence. The contrast between them grew deeper with each passing season. Below, the earth thrummed with life, warm, fragrant, imperfect. Above, the moon remained still, beautiful, distant, flawless but cold. The warmth of their embrace had turned to memory. Their love, once a living flame, was now light and shadow cast across eternity. Sometimes when the moon was full, she imagined descending again, to touch his face, to feel the pulse beneath his skin. But the elixir's power bound her to the heavens. Her tears crystallized before they could fall, becoming stars scattered across the dark. Each one was a wish unfulfilled, a promise she could never keep. And yet, in her loneliness, she found a strange peace. The moon was not empty, it pulsed with quiet memory. Each beam of light she cast upon the world below carried a fragment of her love. Each reflection in a pool, each silver shimmer on a leaf was her way of whispering, "I am still here." How Yi too changed. His grief softened into reverence. He no longer raged against fate. Instead, he found meaning in it. His arrows hung untouched in their quiver. The hands that once sought battle now tended the earth, planting trees that reached toward the sky as though yearning to bridge the distance between them. At night he sat by his doorway, bathed in her light, and spoke softly to the moon as if she might hear. And she did. There was no voice that could cross the divide, but the exchange was constant. His words rose like smoke, her glow descended like breath. It was a communion of silence, holy, tender, unbroken. Seasons folded into years. The mortal world forgot the details of their story, but the heavens remembered. Every full moon became a symbol of their love, a union that transcended flesh, bound now by light and longing. The people began to celebrate her, offering cakes and lanterns to honor the goddess of the moon. They did not know the sorrow behind her beauty, but they felt it. Even in joy, there was a hush, a reverent melancholy, as if every heart understood that love, no matter how divine, carries loss in its shadow.
Chang'e stood at the moon's edge, watching these tributes drift upward, glowing softly in the night air. They reminded her of his touch, the warmth of his hands, the sound of his laughter, the steady rhythm of his mortal heart. For a moment, she imagined herself reaching down, her fingers brushing the currents of light that connected heaven and earth. But when she did, the energy of the elixir surged gently through her veins, pulling her back. Her destiny was sealed. So she turned her gaze to the horizon, where the stars met the curve of the world. Her expression was serene, but in her eyes flickered the same sorrow that had always lived there. A delicate ache, beautiful in its restraint. The wind did not move here, only her robe stirred faintly in the ghostly glow. Below, Hu Yi felt her presence and looked up once more. The moonlight wrapped around him, soft and cool, and in that touchless embrace he found solace. He closed his eyes and whispered her name again, not in grief this time, but in quiet acceptance. Chang Yi heard him. Her lips curved into a faint, wistful smile. Though she could not descend, her love still reached him through the pale glow that bathed his face. That light was all she had left to give, and all he needed to remember. The night deepened. The stars burned like distant embers. On earth, the air was alive with sound, the rustle of leaves, the sigh of the wind, the whisper of rivers. On the moon, there was only stillness, vast and perfect. And in that stillness, two souls continued their eternal dance, one bound to earth, one to sky, forever reaching, forever just beyond touch. The warmth of their love had turned to quiet radiance, the pulse of their desire to timeless peace. It was no longer a fire, but a light that would never fade. The goddess watched, the hero endured, and between them hung the infinite silver distance that only love could fill. The world slept under her glow, the moon shone on, and in that haunting, beautiful silence, their story lived forever.
The moon drifts endlessly across the sky, her glow serene, her silence eternal. Yet beneath that calm radiance lies the echo of a heartbeat, a memory older than time, born of love and loss intertwined. When the world looks up each night and bathes in her silver light, it does not merely witness a celestial body, it feels her presence. Chang'e, the woman who became the moon, the lover who chose eternity and found solitude. Her glow is soft, but it hums with longing, a quiet vibration of desire suspended between heaven and earth. From the beginning, her story was never truly about immortality. It has always been about love, love that dares to reach beyond mortality, beyond reason, beyond the fragile borders of the soul. The elixir she drank was not just a potion of life unending. It was a mirror reflecting devotion, fear, and the cruel beauty of fate. Now, when mortals gather beneath her, their lanterns flickering like fireflies against the night, she watches and remembers. The air carries the scent of sweet rice cakes and incense,
Laughter mingles with prayer. They celebrate her as divine. But none see the woman who once trembled in her lover's arms, who once wept for mortal warmth. The moonlight she sheds is not cold. It is the softened warmth of love transformed. Every shimmer across a lake, every glint upon a lover's skin is her caress, distant yet tender. She cannot descend or speak, yet her presence lingers everywhere, in the hush before sleep, in the stillness that makes hearts ache without knowing why. And below, the earth still remembers him. Hui's bow has turned to dust, but his love endures through her glow. Each full moon is his offering, his eternal gaze turned upward. Together they form the rhythm of night, the longing below, the radiance above, a harmony that transcends both time and death. Their tale whispers a truth mortal hearts have always known. Love and loss are not opposites, but mirrors of the same eternal flame. Desire seeks union, yet separation gives it meaning. The sweetness of touch is made sacred by the ache of distance. Chang'e and Hui became the embodiment of this paradox. Two souls forever connected, yet forever apart.
When the night stills, when the stars tremble faintly, the boundary between heaven and earth grows thin. The moon seems nearer, almost reachable. Lovers pause, their fingers brushing beneath her below, and something stirs within them, an ancient recognition, a whisper carried through the ages. It is her memory awakening in them, the echo of a love that refused to die. The sensual beauty that once bound them still ripples through the world, in moonlit water, in silk curtains, in every gaze that holds both tenderness and ache. The night becomes a lover's realm, a sanctuary for the emotions daylight hides. Under her watch, the boundaries between body and soul blur, desire and sorrow entwine. Chengi's isolation is not punishment, but transformation. Passion bound to flesh became devotion woven into the cosmos. What mortals call tragedy, the heavens recognize as balance, the universe's quiet insistence that beauty must coexist with loss. Sometimes, when clouds veil her face, it feels as if she hides her tears. The mist after rain is said to be her sigh, descending to touch the world she left. It kisses the leaves, the rivers, the faces of those who dream of impossible love. The people of the world tell her myth in many ways. Some speak of betrayal, others of sacrifice, others of fate. But beneath every version lies the same pulse, the yearning to be remembered, the wish that love might outlast death.
Each retelling rekindles the flame that first drew them together. Perhaps that is why the moon's light feels alive. It is not merely reflected sunlight, it is remembrance made visible. Each being carries the taste of longing, the softness of her touch, the echo of his devotion. Nothing born of love ever truly fade. In her stillness, Cheng Yi understands this now. Her sorrow has become serenity, her loneliness a kind of grace. She no longer reaches toward the earth with desperation, but with quiet tenderness. The moon, once her prison, is now her temple. From here she watches over lovers brave enough to love despite loss.
Sometimes, when the night deepens, she imagines Hu Yi among the stars, not the man of flesh, but his essence, his laughter, his warmth, woven into the constellations. In her silence, she feels him still. Love, after all, is energy. It never dies, only changes form. And so the myth endures, not as a warning, but as a hymn to love's persistence. The moon becomes both mirror and muse, whispering that to love is to accept impermanence, and to lose is to become infinite. Every night, when her glow spills across rooftops and rivers, she is both goddess and woman, divine and desiring, distant yet near. Her light touches all and belongs to none. It lingers on faces, slides across bare skin, hides in tears, and glimmers in eyes that still believe. In that tender illumination lies the final truth. Longing, when it endures, ceases to wound. It transforms. Passion becomes memory. Memory becomes myth. Myth becomes light. Chang'e's story is not one of despair, but of transcendence. She loved, she lost, and she became the glow that keeps the night alive. So when the world sleeps beneath her, when silver light smooths every edge of shadow, she watches in peace. The pulse of her ancient heart moves through the quiet world below. The moon glows, not as a reminder of distance, but as proof that love, even broken by fate, can shine forever. Her passion became light. Her longing became legend. And as long as the world turns beneath her glow, love itself will never fade.